I want to talk to you guys about something that is extremely profound, but at the same time, so very, very sad. During the Second World War, hundreds of U.S. airmen were shot down by the Germans, and they landed in the Balkans. They landed in enemy territory, only to be rescued by Serbs. 432 U.S. airmen and 80 Allied personnel were rescued by Serbs. Serbian peasants and Serbian farmers gave refuge to these U.S. airmen, hid them in their homes, and the Germans came and offered money to these Serbian peasants and farmers and said, "We'll give you money if you deliver us American POWs." And these Serbs refused. They put their lives on the line. They put their own lives at risk in the face of the German Nazi reign of terror, just to save other human lives. And why on earth don't we talk about this? This is a part of World War II history we don't talk about. We talk about Normandy, we talk about Patton, we talk about all these things in the Second World War. I have never heard this talked about. Maybe, it is talked about by the American government as a way to express friendly diplomacy to the Serbian government today, but this is not something that is commonly talked about. And here's the thing. Here is the thing, everybody. Here is the fact that makes this story so much more profound and at the same time so much more sad. It was the largest rescue operation of American airmen in history. The largest rescue operation of American airmen in history was done by Serbs. And they don't talk about that. They don't do a movie about that. Instead, they do a movie called Behind Enemy Lines about an American who gets shot down somewhere in the Balkans. I think it's in Kosovo or Bosnia. And this American pilot, played by Owen Wilson, is stranded in the middle of enemy territory, and he has to make his way back to base. And I remember watching that film when I was like 11 years old, and I thought it was a great movie because it's a well-done, it's a well-directed action movie. I didn't know what Serbia was. I didn't know what Kosovo was at that age. I thought it was just a cool action movie. Hell, I thought those enemies in the movie, I thought they were Russians. I thought they were Russians, right? Like, they're all Russians, right? All those people are just Russians, right? They live up in the mountains in the snow, it's cold, and they're Russians. I didn't know what Serbs were. I didn't know what Kosovo was, Albanians were. I never heard of any of these people. But then as I got older, I began to read up on the Balkans, and I began to read up on the wars that happened there in the 1990s, and the KLA and the Croatians, and I read about the Ustasha, I read about the Bosnians, how they were Bosnians in the Nazi SS, and how they were Albanians in the Nazi SS, how they were Croatian Nazis, and they were butchers, and how horrific it was. And then I began to see the reality. Oh, the Serbs saved American lives during the Second World War from the Nazis. And what do we do in the 1990s? We support Albanian Nazis to incite violence in Kosovo. The West, NATO, armed, backed, trained. The KLA, especially the Germans. And it was the KLA that began to attack Serbian police officers, creating provocations, incitements to violence, bringing about destabilization. The Serbs rescued hundreds of U.S. airmen. They led the greatest rescue mission of U.S. airmen in history. And of course, they had help from the U.S. government. But nonetheless, they did a lot of the fighting to protect these American airmen from the Wehrmacht, from Nazi soldiers. And in the 1990s, what do? We help Nazis. We help Albanian Nazis to kill Serbs. We help the KLA. And we knew damn well that the KLA were kidnapping people, taking their organs for organs trafficking. We don't care. In fact, after Mihailovich died, the United States government posthumously awarded Mihailovich I think it was called the Legion of Valor Award or something like that. We gave him a very, very high award after he died, and we kept it a secret. Legion of Merit Award, that's what it's called. The U.S. government awarded Mihailovich posthumously, after he died, the Legion of Merit Award, which I believe was the highest award that somebody could get at the time, for his service in rescuing the hundreds of U.S. airmen. The U.S. government did not want the public to even know about the award. And it's so sad what happened to Mihailovich. It's so sad what happened to this man. Him and his army of Chetniks, they fought against the German fascists. They rescued U.S. airmen, hundreds of them. They put their lives on the line. And even after a number of U.S. airmen were evacuated, Mihailovich was told that he could get on the plane to get out into safety. And this is what he said. This was in 1944. And this is what he said when he was told that he could get into the plane and fly off to safety. He said, "I prefer to lose my life in my country than to live as an outcast in strange land. I'll stay with my soldiers and my people to the end in order to fulfill duty that my king gave to me for king and fatherland, freedom or death." And you read about the Serbian peasants and the farmers who rescued American soldiers and how they refused the money of the Germans. And they preferred to save human lives than to take money, than to take bribes. You read about how Americans found refuge in Serbian villages. You read about how Serbs fought the Germans to protect U.S. airmen from being killed. You read about how Serbs risked their lives to protect U.S. airmen so that they could be evacuated safely. You read about all these things. And then you read about how the British, how the Italians said, "We don't want to side with Mihailovich anymore. They actually never wanted to side with Mihailovich. We want to side with Josip Broz Tito, a communist." And the British sided with the communists over Mihailovich. And we talk about communism all the time. We talk about, Russia and the commies. It was the British who abandoned Mihailovich and supported Tito, the communist. It was the West that backed Tito. And for so many years, I have heard about Tito this and Tito that, and Tito was so bad, and he was an evil communist. He was backed by the British. He was backed by the West. And we hear about, the Soviets and the communism, all the evils of communism. It was the West who backed Tito, and they abandoned Mihailovich. And Mihailovich was brought to trial under Tito's regime. And people went to his trial and defended Mihailovich, and they said, no, this man rescued hundreds of airmen. He's a hero. Why are you killing him? And Mihailovich himself made his own defense in his trial. That didn't matter. He was executed by his own government. So not only has he been forgotten about by the Americans, he was murdered by his own government. See, this is what I hate about war. I mean, there's many things that I hate about war. One thing, war enables genocide. It enables atrocities. Because during a war, hey, let's massacre a village. Who cares? Another thing I hate about war is that people who are nobodies, people who are just regular people, they're not famous, they're not rich, they're just regular people, they want to live normal lives, they get forced into a war. They get put into a position where they have to fight to defend themselves. And they fight for their country, and they fight for other governments, they help other governments, and then they get forgotten about by the very governments that they helped. Imagine fighting in a war. I mean, war is, it goes without saying, right? War is vicious and brutal and cruel and ruthless and horrifying, frightening. and you go through all that bullshit, and you survive. Oh, you survived the war. Thank God. Now I can go back living a normal life. Nope. Now your own government's going to kill you. Or your own government's not going to give a damn about you. Not pay you your pension that you are owed. Reminds me of how the French drafted all of these Africans to fight against the Germans, and then after the war refused to pay them. That's crazy. It's like, we fought for you, and now you're not going to pay us? This is what I hate about war, right? There's many things that I hate about war. That's one of the things that I hate about war, is that the people who do all the dirty work don't really get the appreciation that they deserve. It's extremely sad. It's extremely sad. And that's, yeah, that was the story of Dragoljub Mihailovic. Man, it reminds me of Poland. You know, Poland, historically, during the Second World War, Poland had more people rescue Jewish civilians from the Nazi reign of terror than any other country. Most of the people, civilians, military officials who rescued Jews were Polish. Poland produced more rescuers of Jews during the Holocaust than any other country. And Israel, back in 2018, said, oh yeah, Poland, yes, screw that country, yeah, they're all just a bunch of anti-Semites, and they had the death camps. And Netanyahu said some bullshit about Polish death camps. I mean, it's sickening. It is so sickening how the West really shits on the Slavic world all the time. Like, all the freaking time. Serbia does a whole bunch of heroic actions during the Second World War, saves hundreds of U.S. airmen. Serbs did the greatest rescue mission of U.S. airmen in history. Poland had more rescuers of Jews than any other country. Like, all these facts are not really talked about. We just say, oh, no, they're all crazy. Like, they all drink vodka, and they're violent, and they hate Jews. And like, we'll sit there and just marinate our brains with this nonsense. Oh yeah, Russia, they're all commies, and Putin's a communist. And then you read about how Putin made it literally required reading in education in Russia. Required reading. He made Solzhenitsyn, one of the greatest writers against communism, required reading in Russian education. You don't hear about that. But he did. How could you say he's a communist? And here's another thing. Marxism is anti-religion, but Putin pushes for the advancement of the Russian Orthodox Church. Tens of thousands of Russian Orthodox churches in Russia. So many churches continue to be built in Russia. But he's a Marxist, communist. It's crazy. And for decades, for how many decades have we heard about the Second World War, Nazis, blah, 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 Nazis? But then you read about Ukraine literally having a Nazi unit integrated into its military. You see videos of Ukrainian teenagers and adults jumping up and down saying, Muscovites get the rope. Of course they hate Muscovites because Russians were the ones fighting them during the Second World War. But that doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is Russia bad, and let's just promote the typical narrative that Russia is bad and the West is amazingly perfect. Anyway, guys, I really wanted to get this off of my chest. This is something that I've been reading about for a while. I spent a number of hours today reading up on the rescuing of the U.S. Airmen. Wikipedia has a very, very long article on it. I just wanted to give you guys basically the general summary of it, some facts about it, and really mainly just express myself. That's what this is about. And I want to encourage you guys to read up on how the Serbs rescued hundreds of U.S. airmen. The name of the operation, if you want to Google it, is Operation Halyard. That's what this is called. It's called Operation Halyard. And you can read all about it. It's fascinating, guys. It really is. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.